Welcome back to yet another Mech Deck Tech. Today we have another upgrade guide for you from Aether Drift, featuring Eternal Might, helmed by Temet, Noctamoon's Will. So this is an Esper deck, zombie typal, and it's kind of interesting, right? So Temet is a 4/4 with Vigilance and Menace. Whenever you attack, not specifically with Temet, but just in general, you will draw a card and discard a card, so a little bit of looting. And every time you draw a card, Temet's like, hey, all of your zombies are going to get +1/+1 for the turn. So I really decided that I wanted to lean into the card draw synergies found in Magic, and really just make it so that our boys are big and beefy, basically at all times. But with all of our upgrade guides, we are going to take out 10 cards, put 10 cards in that are all budget, meaning that they are under $10. You know, maybe a few cents over is fine, but generally speaking, $10 or less per card. Before we dive on into those changes, we are going to give a quick shout out to Arcane Fortress, makers of fine TCG accessories, including deck boxes and more, but we'll get to them at the end of the video. Now, before we can put in 10 cards, we do need to take 10 cards out to make room for them. So what are we removing? Well, we're going to start off with the Maskwood Nexus. And you might be thinking, Mech, that's crazy. Maskwood Nexus makes it so all of your creatures are zombies, which is kind of nice. And has the ability to make shapeshifters, which are zombies already, just due to the shapeshifting nature of them. So it's a token outlet, right? That's not bad. That's not bad. And it's like, listen, you're not wrong. It's not bad. But it's also kind of just okay, in my opinion, in this deck, right? I don't think that we need to force the typo for our creatures. Most of them are zombies anyways. The handful that aren't isn't really that big of a deal, so I'm just not really that concerned with it. And 7 mana to get a 3/3 is expensive, right? And obviously, as you go on, that cost gets down to about, 3 mana for a 3/3 through repeated use. But I still think that we could do better, so I am going to cut it. Twisted Abomination. This is a 6-cost zombie mutant 5/3 that can be regenerated, which is nice, but again, kind of whatever. You could also swamp cycle it away. I think if we were using the alternate commander for this deck that cares about you discarding things and creating token copies of them, fantastic, right? We're going to keep this guy. But we're not using that guy as the helm, Swamp cycling doesn't count as drawing a card, right? You're tutoring for a swamp. So for that reason, he had to go. This next one might be a little controversial, and that's the Gleaming Overseer. So, 3 mana, 1/4, gives your zombie tokens, specifically Hexproof and Menace, as well as amassing 1 when it enters. And I think that that's a fine effect, and again, if we were using the alternate commander, which creates us a ton of zombie tokens, I think it's more relevant. But it's not drawing us cards. It's not giving our entire board Hexproof and Menace, right? It's only helping our tokens, so I think we could cut it pretty safely. As well as the Timeless Dragon. So this is another land cycle card, and if we were doing discard shenanigans, using the alternate commander, they shine. In here, right, we obviously have a ton of basic planes. So, if you wanted to use it for mana fixing, you could. We do have 2 non-basic planes that we could tutor for with it. And end of the day, I think it's just okay, and I'm going to go ahead and remove it as well as the Eternal Skylord. So Eternal Skylord is a 5-cost 3/3, amasses 2 whenever it enters, and gives those zombie tokens flying. Again, a lot of these cards are very strong with the alternate commander, but as he is not our focus, I'm not all that concerned about cutting them. Plague Belcher. So Plague Belcher is interesting. It's a 3-cost 5/4 menace. Whenever it enters, you do have to put 2 -1/-1 counters onto a creature that you specifically control. And it's okay, right? Whenever another zombie you control dies, each opponent will lose 1 life, which is interesting, right? A little bit of a little drain on your opponents, little ping. But we aren't doing a ton of self-sacrificing. We are going to be forced to weaken a creature, and that creature could have been a token, right? Maybe that token dies and we deal 1 damage, and we still have a 5/4 for 3. Yay. But if you don't have any other creatures in the field, you're paying 3 mana for a 3/2 with Menace, which is okay. It's not great. It's not bad. Kind of middle of the road. So I'm happy to just sort of let him go. It's not really what we're trying to do. Commence the end game. Now, this is actually a card draw spell. So it's like, oh, Mech, I thought we were leaning into card draw. Why are we getting rid of a card draw spell? And honestly, it's the mana value. So it's 6 to cast. You can do it at instant speed. It can't be countered, which is nice. You get to draw 2 and then amass X based on the number of cards in hand. So at a minimum, right, you're amassing 2. Maybe you're amassing 7 with it, right? That 2-card draw got you a full grip. Maybe you're even a little over 7. But the cost for the card draw is just a little too much. And the zombie that you amass, assuming you haven't already had an army on the field, is summoning sick. So it's not even going to get the benefit of the card draw for this turn in terms of being able to attack. I just think it's a little costly, so I'm happy to remove it. This next one will be no shock to fans of the channel, and that's Cast Out. Really don't like these kind of effects where you basically say, hey, this comes in. I'm going to exile that thing until this thing leaves. You could cycle it away. And again, through like discard shenanigans, you know, it's not bad. It is some card draw. But I think we have better card draw spells out there that are more versatile and are just going to do more for our strategy. Angel of Sanctions follows it up. This is a 5-cost 3/4 angel. So they have flying, as most angels do. Whenever this enters, you get to exile a thing until this leaves, and it could be embalmed. And again, I think that these things are... It's an okay creature. Maybe you target, you know, an opponent's commander, you force them to put it back in, like, the command zone or something like that. But it's not really feeding into what I think we want to do, which is, again, tons of card draw. It's also just not a zombie. So I'm kind of happy to let it go. And the last, but certainly not least worthy cut is Commander's Sphere. I know it's a 3-color deck. Commander's Sphere is like, oh, this is kind of mana fixing. I don't think we need it. We're not touching the mana base. We never touch the mana base in these upgrade guides. I feel that that is boring. It's not an interesting upgrade. But there's enough cheap multicolored lands out there at this point that we do not need Commander Sphere, and I really wish they would stop printing it in every Commander deck. But I digress. Now, with those 10 cuts out of the way, let's hop over into our additions, right? We're going to start off with a Kindred Discovery. So Kindred Discovery is big card draw. And at like the $5 mark, it's budget. So Kindred Discovery enters. We choose a creature type, always zombies. Whenever a creature we control of that chosen type either enters or attacks, we get to draw a card. So, oh, I cast 2 or 3 little zombies this turn. I drew 2 or 3 cards. I attacked with my, like, 4 or 5 zombies. I drew 4 or 5 cards. And with our commander, that is just such a big power boost to all of our creatures. And unless our opponents are playing some sort of token strat where they just have a bunch of chumps all the time, I think the power we're going to gain from this is just overwhelming. Deadly Dispute follows that up. So Deadly Dispute is 2 mana. We do have to sacrifice an artifact or creature along with the mana in order to cast it. But we do have a couple ways of making tokens, and, you know, it's a zombie deck. We also have some recursion from the grave anyway. So, draw 2, create a treasure. So, 2 mana, draw 2 is good. The treasure is icing on the cake, effectively making this a 1 mana draw 2. Black Market Connections follows that up. So this is 3 mana. Beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you get to choose any number of modes, but you have to choose at least one, where you could create a treasure token for 1 life. You could draw a card, which is what we really care about, for 2 life, or you could make a shapeshifter for 3 life. Now you could easily pay 6 life and do all of them. And I think that, like, honestly, in this deck, not the worst choice, right? Those shapeshifters are zombies. We could use those shapeshifters even with the Deadly Dispute that we just went over. Sacrifice a token that we don't really care about. But those first 2 modes are icing on the cake. You know, it's all good. It's all Gucci. Following that up, we have Painful Truths. So Painful Truths is a 3-cost spell that has Converge. So we're going to draw X cards and lose X life based on the number of colors we paid into this. At a minimum, it's 1 card for 1 life, which isn't great. I think at least 2 colors being paid into this is kind of the floor for me. But we are in an Esper deck. It's very possible, and even very likely, I would say, that we're just going to pay 1 of each of our colors into it, draw 3, lose 3, buff our entire board for +3/+3 for the turn. So I think there's value to be had there, as well as value in Wizard class. So Wizard class is kind of a must-have at any kind of card draw matters deck, in my opinion, that has access to it. It's super cheap to pick up. Copies are like under $1, but single blue mana gives you no maximum hand size. You could level it up for 2 and a blue, draw 2 cards. Then you could also pay 4 and a blue, level it up further. Anytime you draw a card, you get to put +1/+1 counters onto creatures. Meaning, oh, that temporary buff, 1 is kind of doubled for a specific creature. You could divide it up if you wanted to. But the buff from this is permanent, right? This creature is permanently larger, and we're kind of here for it. Morbid Opportunist follows that up. So 3 cost, 1/3. Whenever 1 or more other creatures die, doesn't have to be ours, we get to draw a card. You want to chump? That's fine. I'm going to draw a card off of it. Oh, my opponent sacrificed a creature for their own effects. Cool. I'm going to draw a card. That card draw is going to buff my board. We're a little stronger on defense, right? Phyrexian Arena. This card used to actually be kind of on the pricey side. You know, not like crazy pricey, but it's definitely dropped in value with all the reprints recently. But 3 mana, upkeep, draw a card, lose a life. I think that plays well on curve with our commander. So, card draw is always good. Village Rites follows it up. So Village Rites is another one of these things where we need to have a creature we could sacrifice and not care. So again, Black Market Connections. Any zombie that we could really just, you know, sack and grab back as many times as we want. All fine targets. But we are going to draw 2 cards. And we could do so at instant speed, right? So if someone also casts a board wipe, Village Rites, sacrifice a creature, go ahead and draw 2 cards. That creature was going to die anyways. Call of the Ring. So Call of the Ring is 1 to black. Beginning of your upkeep, the ring will tempt you. Whenever you choose a creature to be your ring bearer, you can pay 2 life and draw a card. 1, I think that the ring tempting you is a fine mechanic, right? there's a lot of value to be had there, especially because the second mode, or like the second level, I want to say, of the Ring Tempting You, draws you a card on attack. It does a loot trigger, right? But this has card draw just built into it. Yeah, it's costing you 2 life, but there are ways to gain life in this deck. So life is a resource. You should spend it as such, especially in Commander, where you start with 40. So you're not really in danger of, really ruining yourself. Last but not least for our additions is Ayara of Locthwain. This is triple black, so a little hard to get out in a triple color deck, but powerful anyway. So whenever she or another black creature enters the battlefield under your control, you are going to drain your opponents, right? They're each going to lose 1, you're going to gain 1. You could also tap them to sacrifice a black creature in order to draw a card. So more card draw engine shenanigans, which we're here for. And that life gain isn't, to be ignored. We have ways of, spending life, so we do want some level of balance there. Now, I didn't do any honorable mentions in the Living Energy, but there is one honorable mention that I do want to bring up. I didn't find them on my own. I happened to watch the Game Knights do their upgrade guide for this deck, and they brought up Verinia Lich Queen. And my god, is she good for this deck. So she's a 4/4 for 4. Whenever you attack with 1 or more zombies, you draw that many cards, and then you discard that many cards, and you gain that much life. You could also pay 2 to exile a thing from the grave to create a zombie. She's super good. She's drastically gone up in price. She used to be like a 50-cent card. She's actually hovering around the $10 mark. I think I own a copy. I'll have to double check because I buy all the decks as they come in. But just an obvious auto-include in the deck, but I didn't want to put it in my official upgrade spots because I didn't find it on my own. But for anyone that, didn't happen to watch that other upgrade guide, I want to point it out because it's obviously synergistic here. But I am Mechanized Minion, the Energy King, and that's the upgrade guide. Are there cards that I cut that you're like, whoa, 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 Mech, what are you doing? Those should have stayed in the deck. Are there cards that I overlooked that I didn't put in the deck, right? And they could be over the budget, right? They could be within the budget, whatever you want. You're like, Mech, this is worth having in this Eternal Might deck, all right? Where is it? But as always, these episodes are brought to you by Arcane Fortress, makers of TCG accessories, including deck boxes, sleeves, playmats, and more. If you click the link below, there is a 5% off of all of your purchases, which also helps to support the channel. But of course, you never need to spend any money to support us. You could just like, comment, subscribe, join the Discord if you want to hang out with us outside of the YouTube space, all that good stuff. But until next time, good luck with your builds.